Good evening, everyone. I am really happy to present my guest of this evening. He's the most, I would say, the most prominent anti-Scientology activist in the British Isles at the moment. So, without further introduction, I will bring Apostate Alex on stage. Welcome.
What an introduction. I wouldn't say I'm the most. Wow, that's a thank you. Hi.
Hi. Good to see you. I
Likewise.
definitely think you are the most prominent, and you have been featured in British news recently also, and been quite visible front face of the movement there.
Yeah, but I think it's really important to note straight off the bat that it's a team effort, right? And yes, very much leading the charge, but that doesn't mean I'm doing it on my own. There are so many people that are a part of this community, I suppose, and helping in different ways. Some are front facing, some are behind the scenes that don't want to be named. And you can't do this on your own. You have to work together. And so, it's a team effort. um my face might be on the article, but that doesn't mean there weren't lots of people involved in putting it together and making it happen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and also with the articles released in Sweden this week. It was also a collaborative effort with a keen journalist who was willing to listen to people's stories and not just make some shock value headlines on the
Yeah,
paper for the sake of
you've
it.
been doing amazing work, Mirjam, and everybody that stands with you in protest up there. And I'm really inspired by what you're doing because you weren't a Scientologist and you came into this community and found your passion for helping people and doing what you can. And as an ex-Scientologist, we need people like you to help fight in this cause. There's a limited number of Scientologists, there's a limited number of ex-Scientologists, but the only way we're going to make change is by inspiring non-ex-Scientologists, never-ins, to understand why this is an important issue. And, I really respect that. And I think you're doing great work, especially from a press angle. The press is so important because, yes, it's one thing to speak out on YouTube, fantastic. That reaches an audience. But the press is the way, I believe, that we're going to reach the larger public audience that we need to, because, newspapers, TV channels, so on, reach literally millions of people. And the thing that we need to do is change the public narrative. Scientology isn't just a crazy cult. It's a harmful organization that is abusing people. And the only way you're going to change that public perception is through people speaking out with their stories and press coverage of what's going on.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Anything I have been doing has been been a result of collaboration. That's also why I wanted you to, or why I invited you on my channel, because I have seen also the work you have done in UK, the collaborative work. I know I was on your channel almost a year ago now.
Has it
And
been that long?
yeah, it has. And
Jeez, we need to do another one. You need to come on again and do another video on my
yeah,
channel.
yeah,
Sorry, I
I
didn't
think
realize it'd been that long. Blimey.
I think we talked around the IAS protest as well, but first time it was roughly around a year ago, and now I feel like I have also more experience from my side as well, where we can also exchange some thoughts regarding protesting, because it has been a gradual progress for me as well to learn to do the things in a way that I feel most comfortable with, because I was, of course, inspired by people who were doing their activism and protesting in their own way, but I had to find my own way of doing things, and also to find the kind of angle where I want to proceed. Just
Yeah.
like you are focusing on the abuses of Scientology, I have exactly the same kind of point of view.
Yeah.
Whether you want to reach Scientologists or the public, that's also one angle to look at it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it from an outsider looking in, I can see the journey that you've been on from, you know, when you first came onto the scene to, you know, organizing these protests and just going and live streaming and then having this big thing happen for the birthday, LRH's birthday event, and then now the press stuff. Like, it seems to me like you've found your feet with it all. You know, you've done the really important research into the laws and what you can and can't do, so that you understand where the rules are in terms of protesting, and then you've utilized that to your advantage and built a bit of a community, and then gone to the press to try and get more coverage. And you know, it doesn't seem like it's a selfish endeavor. It's like you've been bringing people together and trying to highlight people's stories, like Bianca, and connecting people that need to be connected to get the story out there. And I think that's what's really valuable for this community, is people that do that work together and do what they can and respect the laws. You know, the more education you do, the more effective you can be as an activist, in my opinion. You know, because anything that Scientology can use against you, they will. So any tiny slip up you make, they will exploit that. So it's really important that you understand the rules around protesting in your country or your city.
Yes, yes, and in the beginning, they were for sure made some maybe I would call them mistakes, not entirely breaking the law, but you know, maybe crossing the line a little bit, where it was not necessarily something illegal, but not acceptable by the local norms. And that behavior has been corrected and not repeated. And I have the whole time had good communication with the authorities, police, and so forth. So Scientology has been fairly toothless when it comes to what I do. And I think that has been also quite the same situation for you as well, right?
Yeah, I think it's really important to build relationships with people. You know, a lot of what I've been doing is Scientology play the long game, and I feel like you have to play the long game too, right?
Mm,
You know, it's one thing to organize a one-off protest and get a bit of press, but if you really want to effect change, and do an effective protest, and when I say protest, I'm not talking about people who just live stream every single day. That is a form of protest. But when you have
mm,
an organized event, you need to put planning into it, because you need to tell the police in advance, this is where we're going to be, this is what we're going to do, and also educate them on, look, you are going to get
mm.
lots of calls from Scientology saying we're doing X, Y, and Z. All they want to do is shut you down. And just building the relationship with the police enables you to exercise your right to protest more effectively, I think. And it's really important when you're organizing large scale stuff like that.
Yeah, precisely. And you're totally right. My intentions are purely for the people that I have actually met throughout this movement, who I want to support in their fight to get justice, so to speak,
Yeah.
as well as, of course, end the abuse in Scientology, because unfortunately it has become known to me that it also happens in Europe. It also happens in Copenhagen. When I started, I was a little bit naive, thinking that, you know, the worst things happen in USA, and you know, Denmark and UK is a little bit different in that terms. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why I started speaking out in the first place, was because, you know, you hear a lot about abuses in the organization at upper level management in LA and in
Mm,
Florida. And there wasn't really, you know, John Atack and other people had spoken out in the past, and he had a channel and so on. But there was a real lack of people who had recently left, who were speaking
mm,
out from different cities, you know, class 5 orgs around the world. And so I was like, look, if I can speak out and share my story, I can try and help demonstrate that the abuse happens in every level of the organization, in every city in which it operates. And as a result of more people coming out with their stories, it's becoming evidently clear that the experience in Scientology is exactly the same, no matter where in the world you are. Whether you're in the Sea Org, whether you're in your staff or a public, you know,
mm.
yes, your time in Scientology will be different. You have your own story and whatever, but the tools and the mechanisms that Scientology use to coerce, control, and abuse people are almost identical everywhere. And it's really important to show that this is a criminal organization that operates internationally.
Yeah, and this could be actually a little bit of a segue to conversation regarding the fair gaming and the kind of operations that Scientology does in order to try and make our life as difficult as possible. But now I lost the train of thought completely in mid sentence. Does that ever happen to you?
Oh, all the time. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
But I think that fair game is important to talk about.
Mm,
I think if you become an activist and you start making real change, like start making a real difference, and Scientology
mm,
perceive you to be a threat, fair
mm,
game is real. They will come after
mm.
you, right? They are
Yeah.
following a set a pre-written set of rules, policy letters that
Mm,
dictate how to handle a suppressive person, an enemy of the
yeah.
church. And in the past, I think Scientology had way more resources than they do now. So they would go after anyone and everyone that would speak out. But I think now, with Scientology shrinking, they are limited in their resources in OSA. But also there is just a huge quantity of people now speaking out and using platforms like YouTube to do so, and there's nothing they can do about
Mm,
it. So they have to assign their resources very carefully, and I think they've reserved the real hard fair game tactics for the people they perceive to be big threats. And so I think because of that, there's a bit of safety in numbers. If you are an ex-Scientologist and you're scared about speaking out but you want to share your story, there's very
mm,
little risk of Scientology coming after you just from sharing your story or speaking out, starting a YouTube channel. But if you
mm.
start really making a difference and being a bit of a thorn in their backside, i.e., organizing protests, getting press, then Scientology are going to assign more resources to destroying you. That's what the policy says. So it's not something to be taken lightly. You have to be aware of it and you have to be prepared for it. So
Mm.
if you are prepared to deal with it, then fantastic, go for it. But it's not for everybody, and I don't judge anyone who's not willing to put their neck on the line for it. But once you're in Scientology's crosshairs, you are in them for life. Like, they are still attacking Mike Grinder, and he passed away months ago.
Yeah, exactly. And that's now I remember what I was supposed to say was that I don't know if you have experienced this in UK, but in Denmark, a lot of the public Scientologists have said to me this statement that that's only in the US, and kind of distancing themselves, for example, from David Miscavige, as if he was not very important figure in the local Scientology circles. Have you experienced that as well?
Yeah, I mean, not since I started speaking out, because now I'm a big bad SP. Scientology
Mm,
don't want to have any sort of communication with me whatsoever. But when I was in Scientology, that is definitely the line that we would say.
yeah.
One of the lies they told me, the reason that, you know, well, one of the reasons I ended up joining was because they managed to convince me that all of these stories you hear about abuse and people being
Mm,
harmed and forced family disconnection, all of that stuff, it happens over in the States. It doesn't happen
yeah.
here. That's not what Scientology is meant to be, right? Something's gone wrong there. They haven't applied it
Yeah.
correctly. It's not like that in the UK. It's not like that in London.
Yeah.
Look around. Does anyone here look like they've been forced to disconnect from anyone or whatever?
Yeah.
And why don't you just try for yourself? And
Yeah.
you'll see, and base your opinion on Scientology on your own experience. Don't listen to this small number of people who had a bad experience over in the States. Like, every
Yeah.
big organization has some level of corruption at the top, so I'm sure things did happen, but that doesn't mean we're all like that, right? That is what we would say. I would say that to
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And it's a lie, but it's also the cognitive dissonance. When you are a public Scientologist or a staff
Mm,
member, you probably don't want to confront the fact that these things are real. It's hard to come
yeah.
to terms with that. So it's a lie you tell yourself just as much as it's a lie you tell other people.
Yeah. And it's not to diminish the people in the US their experience, but it's just very easy. This could be this could be something that in US in some other connection could say, okay, that's something that happens in Europe or Africa or whatever. Of course, the experiences in the US are just as important, but it's an easy way for the public Scientologists to brush off the negative information that is circulating about Scientology.
Yeah, diminishing it is exactly what they want to do. You know, one of the things that
Mm,
we used to say is, you know, if you go to a restaurant and you have an okay meal, you're not going to leave a
mm,
review necessarily. Whereas if you have a
mm,
terrible experience and you're really
mm,
annoyed at the service you got, the food was really bad, you're going to
mm,
leave a negative review.
mm,
And so with Scientology, yeah, there are a handful of bigots in America who had a bad experience and now they're trying to make a lot of noise about it.
yeah.
But you know, it's just a handful of people who had a bad experience. You don't hear about the millions of people who have an okay or good experience. That's
Mm,
what we used to say to people because we're trying to minimize the noise around any black PR.
yeah.
But of course, you know, abuse happens in every level of the organization, in every city. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and you probably, like you said before, you agree with me that the more impact you have, the more consequences you also experience of that. I have myself been a target by Scientology currently by only legal ways where they have been contacting police, applied for a restraining order. When that was denied, it was repeated once again. They applied for a restraining order. For you, it has been both harassment at your own home as well as trying to prohibit your ability to protest. Correct?
yeah, I mean, fair game comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. You know, the valuable final product, as in the goal, the mission of the Office of Special Affairs, is dismissed attackers, right? So they want to, and they will do anything they possibly can to try and get you to shut up, right? So, for example, you know, they've emailed my family members. How they got my mum and my brother's email address, I do not know, but they did, and they emailed them, not officially from Scientology, but from a concerned viewer that's seen Alex's channel that is worried about him, and you should be concerned, and blah blah blah. You know, it's very shady and underhanded, underarmed, whatever the term is. Um,
Mm,
so yeah, there's all of that stuff, and then there's the you know, having my front door kicked in. There's the
mm,
online harassment. You know, we're now at over 10,000 tweets that have been sent to me over the last like couple of months, you know, attacking
mm,
me. There's articles on the Stand League website and so on. It's something that can be expected, but it's not something I think
mm.
that should be tolerated.
Yeah.
And that's why I chose to go to the press about it and make sure people are aware. No, this is still going on, even though it has been several, like 2 decades since the first BBC Panorama documentary here. Like they are still
Yeah.
engaging in this behavior. And it's just very unchurch-like.
Yes, I totally agree. Uh, some of the ex-members have said to me that I am a little bit of a difficult target to them because I have no history in Scientology. So
Yeah.
they have nothing on me, and it makes their task more difficult. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that will be the biggest bugbear for the OSA agents who are assigned to the Mirjam flap, right? Which is what I'm
Mm.
sure they're calling it. There will be a plan in place, and there will be an investigation. Who is this
Mm,
person, and what can we do about it? And
mm,
because you're not an ex-Scientologist, they don't have all this dirt on you. But that means they have to therefore find it. So you
mm,
know, without wanting to scare you, I know you're aware of all of this anyway, but you have
mm,
to be prepared that if they don't have dirt on you, they will find it. Not they'll
mm,
try to find it, they will,
mm,
right? They will hire private investigators to follow you in a covert way that you won't know is happening. Then there's a
yeah.
noisy investigation where they're overtly trying to intrude in your life. But the first step is always to gather information. So they will try and figure
Mm,
out your routine, where you live, where you go, who you spend your time with, and they'll be photographing and gathering evidence about all of your friends, where you work, your employer, and they'll be doing this massive covert intelligence gathering operation to gather as much information as they can on you. Then they will then use that to turn it into a plan of like, okay, what can we exploit here? And the way they do that is, you know, dependent on the person. They might try and plant someone in your company to try and get you fired, or they might plant someone who's a friend of a friend to try and start spreading a rumor about how you've done X, Y, and Z or whatever. Or, you know, they might try and pay off your neighbor to get pictures of you in the garden or whatever, right? It sounds insane, but this is actually what they do. And, you know, the only defense, in my opinion, is make sure you're squeaky clean. And if you're not squeaky clean, be prepared for it to come out. And that's okay. Own it and be like, yeah, I did that, or this happened to me. Like, I'm not ashamed of it. But if they don't find anything, they'll just make something up. Like, when they get desperate, they will just manufacture drama.
Yeah, and that's also what I'm expecting, because I'm an extremely boring person who has also informed their employer about the activism and been in the same relationship for almost 20 years. So there is very little to be found in my background.
Yeah, I mean,
so I'm not really concerned about it, but you know, I will. And also, I have a kind of a thick skin, so any kind of accusation will not hurt me.
Yeah, I mean, look, they will just try and make your life as difficult as possible. Like they will, for example, they will call up, I don't know, the tax office, and they'll report you for committing tax fraud, even though there's no evidence of that and they haven't actually looked at your taxes. They just want to trigger an investigation, right? So then the tax office will then contact you, and then they'll audit your taxes or whatever. And ultimately, they won't find anything. However, it's a real pain for you because you're having to deal with all of this investigation. And then once they've done that, they'll contact, you know, another department, and they'll just get people to cause a bit of a nuisance for you. They'll report your car for not having car tax, or, you know, not paying your social security or whatever. And it doesn't matter if you are or you aren't. Like, they'll just try and get you to have to deal with this constant investigation just to make your life more difficult.
Yeah. Well, then I think I'll just have to say to Osa, I'm looking forward to it very much, because I know they are watching.
Yeah, bring it on. Hi, Janet.
Hi, Annette. And Eric. We have a power couple
Eric.
Here. Yeah. So just to give us an example, I haven't really talked about this publicly before, but I received some, I think it's called Discovery, at least in the US, where I got the information, whatever had been reported. And it was very desperate, because it was a long list of how many times I had said that Scientology is a cult during my protest, which was 100 times. Also, I had said 45 times that Scientology is a human trafficking cult, and they had put timestamps with minute and second in which part of the video I had said that. And I stand by those words, because that is my own personal opinion, which I'm allowed to express. So there is not much to work on, but I can see that I'm getting some watch hours from the Scientology.
One of my favorite things to point out is, if you think about it, Scientology are actually paying me to speak out against them, right? Because they watch my videos, and they also advertise on YouTube, right? If you've ever watched any video about Scientology, a Scientology ad will pop up every now and then, and as a creator, you get a small portion of that ad revenue. So they are actually paying me to speak out, and the only way they're going to stop doing that is if they stop running ads on YouTube, which they're not going to do. So thank you, Scientology, for paying me to do this. Obviously not very much, but still, it's funny to point that sort of stuff out.
Yeah, you had some kind of article to share regarding fair gaming, and
yeah, I put this out on my blog. So, like, there are obviously thousands of pages of documents and policy letters that dictate how Scientology attack people. But I put together a selection that were relating to fair game and press and media. And I'll share my screen in a second. But beforehand, I think looking at what you've been doing with the press, and you've had some great success in that. One thing that I've been doing whenever a journalist approaches me or I approach a journalist, one of the first things that I do is educate them on how they're going to be attacked. Because what has happened a lot is a journalist is up for doing an article, they do a big investigation, they write a long piece, and their editor approves it, and then it goes to the newspaper's legal department, and the legal department go, oh no, we're scared, we don't want to be sued, and so they put the kibosh on it, and it never gets published. So by putting in that legwork beforehand and educating them on, look, these are the policies, then I've found that it creates more success in the press, and it just shows that like this is their modus operandi.
Yeah.
Here,
And just to add on that, actually, the journalist who published or whose publication made these 2 articles, they sent their journalist to Copenhagen, where he could see this distraction and trying to sabotage our protest by first hand, because they had hired this window cleaning company that was connected to Scientology and barricaded in front of the building. And he could do the background investigation by, simply checking up on the license plate of the car that was parked in the front. so
it's
there was
sloppy.
no.
Yeah.
It's
sloppy, but it's like, to me, it's just not like, what church, right, invests huge quantities of money and resource into attacking its critics. Like, if you are genuinely an organization that exists for the public benefit and you genuinely want to make the world a better place, why are you spending your parishioners' donations on attacking a handful of people who are speaking out against the abuses in the organization? Like, as a marketing and PR person, right, here is my free advice to you, Scientology. The best thing you can do for your PR is to come out and say, yes, there has been abuse in our organization. We are horrifically sorry about it. And we are going to change. And here is what we're doing about it. And here's, some money for everybody who's been abused. And we're also paying all our Sea Org staff minimum wage now. And, that would be the best PR move you could make. But of course, they're never going to do it, because policy says that you have to follow what Aaron Hubbard said.
And they would be financially ruined if they would have to start paying fair wage to their Sea Org members as well.
Undoubtedly. So yeah, this is my blog.
So this is your blog. Can you introduce your blog as well? Just to plug it a little bit.
Scientologybusiness.com is my blog. I report on Scientology's UK and European activities mostly. It's not like a personal blog where I write my thoughts and opinions. I try and report on what's going on from a news type standpoint. And it's not just me. There are quite a few people that have written articles on this website. I'm trying to make it a bit of an outlet, like a media outlet, rather than a personal blog. So if anyone wants to contribute an article, please get in touch. But the whole idea is getting the message out there and like reporting on what's going on. And this is a prime example of that. This is just an article where I've contributed very little. It's just quotes from L. Ron Hubbard policy that show what they're doing. So, for example, this is a quote here: you can defend to a certain degree, and you have to defend to a certain degree, but use 75% of your energies to attack, and you will always win. Find a weak spot and attack it. Attack expertly and attack perfectly, and don't flub with the attack. Always put your concentration on the attack, and you win every time. L. Ron Hubbard, right? And I think that just shows the mindset that OSA are in. And then we talk about how, look, there's a whole legal officer whose job it is to, infiltrate government and so on. And this is an excerpt from Attacks on Scientology. The correct procedure: spot who's attacking us, start investigating them promptly for felonies or worse using our own professionals, not outside agencies. Double curve our reply by saying we welcome an investigation of them. Start feeding lurid blood, sex, crime, actual evidence on the attackers to the press. So this is Scientology policy. If you are an activist that is starting to make real change, and you are actually, making a difference and you're being effective, you have to be aware that this is what Scientology will do. It's enshrined in their policy. It's not a question of will they do it? They may not. No, they will. They have to follow this step by step. So you have to be prepared for that. And, you know, when that does happen, if you're prepared, then you can shut it all down, you know. So when Scientology started publishing all these articles saying I'm X, Y, and Z and attacking me on Twitter, I thought, look, rather than get caught up in the argument and discussion about what is and isn't true, I'm like, let's just post the policy and people can see for themselves, right? You know, this is what they want to do. They want to just feed rumors to paint you as some sexual criminal that has felonies, because that is what's called dead agenting in Scientology. So even if it's true or not, like they'll find something and make it up.
I'm thinking, I mean, this policy is from 1966. First of all, I think Europe, I'm generalizing now, but Europe versus USA is a little bit different culture when it comes to reputation and allegations. In USA, it seems that your image is basically your most valuable commodity. That's like, and it can be easily damaged. Whereas in Europe, I think people, it's like, you know, just water off your back. You know, it doesn't seem to have the same kind of harm, for example, to your professional or private life. And to bring into this equation also social media today, where anyone can say anything about anyone. So it doesn't have the same kind of weight as it probably did in 1966.
No, especially as Scientology now have a reputation for attacking and harassing critics and former members. It's something that if you speak to anybody about Scientology that has no knowledge of it, other than they'll probably know Tom Cruise is a Scientologist, and they'll know that, oh yeah, they attack and harass their critics, right? Those are the two things they're most known for among the general population. So it actually boggles my mind that they continue to do it, because it's just such bad PR for them. Like, nobody really reads one of Scientology's attack websites or articles and then thinks, oh yeah, this sounds reasonable, what a horrible guy. No, they read it and they think, oh, this is Scientology. Like, of course they're going to be saying horrible things about this person. Like, all it does is make Scientology look bad. And it would be, again, free PR advice for you, Scientology. Just stop doing it and you will look a lot better. But they can't, because the policy says they have to do it.
There's something about reporters there.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a longer one, but this is about how, like, so the policy is admin know-how, PTS sections, personnel and execs, again, 1966. It's talking about like the relationship with journalists, and this is what I share with reporters. L. Ron Hubbard says, there are no good reporters. There are no good government or SP group agents. The longer you try to be nice, the worse off you will be. And the sooner one learns this, the happier he will be. Some staff member in such contact points in the org should be the only one that handles, and all other staff should be given chips for talking to such person. So this means you are forbidden from speaking to a reporter or an enemy of the church. There is one terminal for that, and that is OSA. And then it talks about, you know, what happens if you start speaking to them and how it can create a problem in an org. But look, the staff personnel who handles should point at the agent if other staff is about and say some keyword like this is a government man, at which point all other staff in the unit turns its back or pointedly walks off. So if there is ever an investigation into Scientology, a reporter shows up at an org, or, you know, the police show up, or, you know, a government inspector shows up for whatever reason, the policy is nobody's allowed to talk to them. You call OSA and there is one person that comes and handles that situation. So in terms of obstruction of justice, right, this makes it really difficult for the police to do their job because they're following the policy. And then it says, when such agents act or sound very suppressive, get them investigated, find the scandal and attack. It is a fortunate truth that such people also have crimes in their background that can be found, find and expose them. So there's no question here. The Scientology belief is that if you're attacking Scientology, you are a criminal, and we will find out what your crimes are. There's no
Yeah.
gray area. There's no nuance, right? Binary
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah. I will need to share this with the person who wrote those 2 articles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really, really important to like just show them, look, when they go after all these journalists, and obviously they will
Mm,
send reports and make complaints, for example, to the watchdog or whatever, the regulator that regulates journalists. Like whenever an article
mm,
goes out, they will attack back, and
mm,
it's really important for the journalist to know that that's going to happen, and they just want to tie you up in legal affairs and like back
mm,
and forth litigation to try and
mm.
intimidate you into not writing about Scientology again. And we really need brave journalists who are prepared to take that on, and not afraid of the legal threats, because
Yeah.
without them, the story's not going to get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was trying to read the articles as objectively as I could. But for example, Linda in the public affairs in Los Angeles gave a response. It was just the regular, religious haters lying, trying to run their own agenda, so forth. That was the comment regarding Bianca's story, which you can find documentation on her background and what has happened to her. She even said she had the history, the passport with the stamp when she first arrived to USA at the age of 2. It's it's a very bad look for Scientology to try and brush off her story and her experiences with this kind of statement, even
Yeah,
if you are not personally emotionally invested on the story,
yeah,
on a personal level.
yeah. For like I said, from a PR perspective, right? If Scientology weren't Scientology and there were just some other church and this Bianca story came out, right? The best thing that you could do as a church is go, wow, we are horrified to hear this story.
Mm,
Firstly, we apologize. That doesn't sound like something that we would ever want to happen to anybody. And we are
mm,
mortified that this happened to Bianca. And we
mm,
are now going to launch an investigation, and we have commissioned an external party to investigate us, so that it's
mm,
not biased. We have reported to the police that this is what Bianca has said, and we are cooperating with them. We want to get to the bottom of this, and we want to make sure that the people responsible are held accountable. And we also want to prevent it from happening to other people. We are
mm.
sorry, we messed up, and we'll do better. That's what should be
Exactly.
happening. But they cannot do
Exactly.
that because they have to do what L.
Mm.
Ron Hubbard said, and that is attack the attacker.
Yeah, and it's also a difficult argument for them to even make this type of statement, because I prepared a press release in advance of our protest, where I included stories of 3 second generation Scientologists and their story of survival. All of them had been trafficked by their mothers into 3 different countries: USA, UK, and Denmark. All of them had been recruited and signed the Sea Org contract around the age of 10. Worked and lived in horrible conditions, and when finally leaving, they're being disconnected by the mothers. How would you be even able to admit to these experiences of them, because you have 3 people with almost identical story in 3 different locations, three
Yeah.
different countries?
Yeah, and this is the thing, that that's why it's important for people to speak out and share their stories publicly.
Mm,
If you don't want to put your neck on the line, say you've still got family that are in Scientology, you don't want to risk
mm,
disconnection, it's absolutely perfectly acceptable to share your story under a fake name or redact any personal identifiable information. But the best thing you can do is share your story publicly, because the more evidence there is of this happening around the world, the more likely it is government and the police and so on will step in to stop it happening to other people. It's been
Yeah.
too long that this organization has got away with its harassment, with its abuse, with its harmful practices. And my activism is all about, I don't care if you want to be a Scientologist, you can believe in it.
Mm,
You have a freedom of belief and a freedom of choice. But what you can't do is abuse people. Now, can you
mm,
have the belief without the behavior is another question. But,
mm.
the point is, be a Scientologist, but, don't abuse people. And
Yeah.
the only way that we're going to get government to step in is with more exposure of the prolific nature and extent that abuse happens in Scientology. It's not just a case of one or two defectors in LA. It's a case of
Mm,
everybody that has come into contact with Scientology in some way, shape, or form has been harmed. And most of them don't even know it. And so the
mm,
more we can do to shine a light on people's stories and be a voice for other people whose voice has been taken away, the better.
mm. Yeah. And I assume you also receive, because I receive regularly emails from people who have left that want to just to share their story with someone, not because they want to speak out publicly, but just to have someone to share their experience with. And I personally feel really honored to be trusted in that position. But it also says that there are so many unheard stories, and there are so many wrongdoings that never see the daylight because
Yeah.
people are not willing to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you watch someone's interview or you read someone's story, there is always something that you can relate to in that. And I think that's the power in numbers is,
Mm,
even if you were in the Sea Org at International Management in LA and I was on staff at London Org, our experience of Scientology is very, very different. But there are
mm,
some key similarities, and the way you're treated, the way you think and process information, the abusive nature is very similar. Even though people suffer abuse in different to different levels, the abuse I suffered was nothing compared to people who were on the RPF, for example. But the nature of it, the way it's done, was exactly the same. And you never know like what similarities you'll see. And by hearing someone else's story, it might help you realize, oh, wait, hold on, that happened to me and I forgot about it because I'd compartmentalized it in my brain. Yeah, that was traumatic,
mm,
and then it helps you in your own healing journey. And so, yeah,
mm.
100%. If anyone's watching this that is an ex-Scientologist or someone under the radar, I'm always happy to speak to you and listen. And sometimes it's really helpful just to speak to someone who's been through something
Yeah,
similar. You don't have to share your story publicly at all. But anything I can do to help people, I will.
yeah. Regarding your own protesting, have you planned anything for the time being, or are you still working on the what would we call the Scientology? They are trying to basically prohibit you protesting anywhere, not just at Saint Hill, correct?
Yeah, so Scientology applied for a PSPO, which is Public Spaces Protection Order, which would ban
Mm,
protesting outside Saint Hill. But the ramifications of that would be that a PSPO could be implemented outside every Scientology org in the country. So it's really important that we
mm,
fight it, and it's a very lengthy process. There was evidence gathered. They attended with observers the IES protest, and that process is still ongoing. I had a meeting with Mid Sussex District Council only earlier this week, actually, where we made our case, basically, reviewed the evidence. I wrote on Tony Ortega's Underground Bunker earlier today about that process and the next steps. We won't get a decision until summer. So at the moment, there's no plans to protest outside Saint Hill because
mm,
we're not, in order for a PSPO to be put in place, there needs to be persistent, ongoing disruption to the local community. And the case that we've made is there's only been 2 protests in the last 6 years.
mm,
So that's not
mm,
persistent. And actually, it works in our favor to not be live streaming and protesting outside Saint Hill every single day, because that will
mm.
only aid Scientology in their request for a ban. So at the moment, there are no plans to protest outside Saint Hill, and we'll see what happens with the PSPO. That doesn't mean there's not stuff going on in the background, making preparations for other ways we can protest. You know, we've got a couple of milestone events coming up in the calendar. There's the 75th anniversary of Dianetics in the at the beginning of May. Tom Cruise is being awarded a fellowship at the British Film Institute. And there's going to be a fancy dinner and a talk. And then there's a new Mission Impossible film premiere that's going to be happening in London. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave that there.
Yeah. Okay. But I assume you have a little bit similar kind of approach. We might not be always online on YouTube, but we're definitely online in other places and working behind the scenes to make things happen.
And I think you'll appreciate this, Mirjam. And for anyone watching that doesn't know, like the work Mirjam puts in and other people as well, like being an activist is not just making videos on YouTube. Like actually the real work is what goes on behind the scenes. It's the building relationships with reporters and journalists and you know, government officials and police, and it's laying the groundwork and working on investigative pieces, whether that be an article in the press or a documentary or, you know, a police investigation. Like all of that work has to happen in confidence because you don't want to spoil anything, and it's important to get it done and be done correctly. And all of that takes time and effort and energy. And you know, what you hear about on YouTube is only just the tip of the iceberg. So anyone watching this, absolutely give Mirjam a round of applause for everything that she's doing behind the scenes, because
I'm not begging for praises at the moment. That was not at all.
Like from seeing what you talk about on your channel, I know how much work from personal experience. I know exactly how much you're actually doing behind the scenes, and it's a lot more, I expect, than what we see. And you know, I congratulate you for that.
Thank you. And YouTube has been the whole time for me. I'm not someone who's enjoying being in front of camera. Right now, when protesting, I'm only basically allowed to film my own face because Scientologists try to plant some of their people in my videos and making privacy complaints. But YouTube is a way to reach as big audience as I can as one person. If we are not talking about press. So it's a way to give out important information if something is going on, and also documenting the protest activities, because Scientology is making that very difficult at the moment. Not impossible, so don't get any ideas also, but more difficult than it was in the start. So
yeah, and that's what they want to do. They just want to make life difficult for you because they want to get you to a point where you give up. You're like, oh, this is so much hassle. Like I used to be able to just show up outside Norg and live stream, and now I've got to like go through this process of organizing it, getting permission and blah blah blah. Like, so it's just not worth it anymore. It's not easy. But that's what they want, is they want to make it as difficult as they can, so you just give up, right? And this is why it's really important that when Scientology fight, you fight back. You put your foot down and go, okay, bring it on. Make it as difficult as you possibly can for me. That's not going to stop me, right? So there's no point in trying. Like, stop wasting your time. Like, you know, it doesn't matter what you throw at me. I'm going to keep on charging on. And you need that kind of like mentality, I think, to really make a difference.
Yeah, and I'm not a marketing professional, but I always been interested in marketing, and I think this has really made my creative juices flow, in the sense that I have gotten a lot of ideas, and I have a lot of things planned also for the spring and summer regarding protesting. So I think we can be even more effective and visible thanks to Scientology making the regular live streaming more difficult. So I accept the challenge.
Yeah, accept the challenge. And also, like, think about it, like the harassment and the fair game, right? Like, you know, there was this double page spread in the Observer, like it was the 5th most read news article on their website, the Guardian's website, that day. And the Guardian's like the 3rd biggest newspaper in the UK. Like, that exposure was only a result of Scientology fair game. So thank you, Scientology, for giving me an opportunity to score national press attention about your activities. If they didn't fair game me, that press wouldn't have happened. And because of that press, there are now more people reaching out who want to support the cause, more people reaching out to the Aftermath Foundation that need help leaving and escaping, and more people interested in the whole Scientology fiasco. So thanks, Scientology. You know, your fair game doesn't work. It is fundamentally flawed. And I will just keep on using that to my advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, I would call that a flunk.
Yeah,
From
flunk for
Scientology
sure.
side. Okay, I wanted to say hi to a few people, but there's actually 52 people here. So I can see Hans Christian is present. Good to see you.
Hey,
Antic Mama Squirrel, welcome. We have Jennifer. I hope that everyone is already subscribed to Alex's channel. If not, please go over there and
thank
give
you.
him a subscribe. Rocks in a Box is here. Kate, we have a lot of people. I think I'm gonna have a hard time to go through everyone. Donna's here. A lot of friends, and I really appreciate because I think, like you have talked about the teamwork here, it's not even just the people doing the work, but the viewers and their ability to spot things that we don't necessarily see, giving us tips, also contacting press and giving us valuable information. It's a really big part of my activism, at least.
Yeah, like, you know, there is no set thing to do as an activist. There's no like, if you want to be an activist, this is what you do. There's no plan,
Mm,
right? Anybody can be an activist, and the best thing you can do is just follow your gut and do what you think is right. You know, if you are somebody who watches these videos and comments on the live stream and then comments underneath the video afterwards, like, that is activism. You are helping push that video out to more people. And if that's all you do, fantastic. Thank you. That is great. You know, some people standing out there live streaming, some people organizing protests, some people are contacting the press. Everybody contributes to this in their own way. And together that builds this big community and this movement that is growing day by day. So thank you to everyone for contributing in
yes,
every way that you possibly can. It all
yes.
helps.
Absolutely. I have started some comments here, so maybe we should just go and look at
Sure.
them. Uh, Hans Christian, okay, there's ask Alex about fair game and preemptive measures. Yes, yeah, we discussed
Yeah.
about that earlier, but
Yeah. I think also preemptive measures is like, you know, we all know about them coming after you once you start speaking out and, you know, trying to get you
mhm,
sacked and all this sort of stuff. But you just have to be prepared for the stuff that they will do. That is a long-term thing, right?
mm,
Like, they will plant someone in your life that you least suspect, and you won't
mhm,
know that they're a Scientologist, or you won't know they're hired by Scientology. It will be a friend of a friend has a cousin who you meet at a family barbecue or something, right?
mm,
And you just get chatting and it's cool, you know, you get on really well, and then you don't speak for 6 months. And then 6 months
mhm,
later, you cross paths naturally again. And over a natural amount of time, you end up building a relationship with this person. So you never suspect that they're an
mm,
OSA agent, because the time that it's taken to build the relationship, you think there's no way Scientology would go to that length. But no, they
mm,
absolutely will. So they do start putting stuff in place that is going to be a long-term tactic. So you have to have your guard up at all times, and just be prepared for it. It's not just about harassing people and attacking them online. It's about covert intelligence operations.
yeah. And has this happened to you uh, personally? Have you been aware of it, and has it happened more than once?
There has been a lot of fair game that has been going on. And one of my favorite things to do is let it happen. Because once you click and you know that that person's an agent, right?
Mm,
Play them at their own game.
mm,
Let them think that you don't know, right? Because then you
yeah.
know, it's better. Sometimes it's better to know your enemies, right? And you know, there are definitely a couple of people in my life that I am maybe 80 or 90% certain are at least compromised. Whether or not they're actual plants that have been put there by Scientology, I don't know. But, you know, people who at least have somebody whispering in their ear who's telling them lies or information from Scientology. And so sometimes it's better just to leave them in place and just be careful with what you tell them, but play them at their own game, you know?
Yeah. Actually, this made me think of a very funny incident when we were protesting in Copenhagen. I had a little break with the Dutch Landisman where we just walked about 100 meters away from the protest place, sat on a bench, and I could spot right away that there was an undercover Scientologist agent who sat next to us. And I just called it out right away. I don't know if I maybe should have done something else, but I said, you know, these OSA agents are everywhere. And he stood up and walked away immediately.
No, that's the best way of dealing with it. Like for like at the IES protest, right? The beauty of our group, I suppose, if you want to call it that, is we are so friendly and we get together, we all know each other, and we're a nice bunch because we lead with kindness and compassion. So we welcome everybody into our group. We go to the pub afterwards for a drink. Like, we're nice, we get along. So anybody who randomly shows up and then doesn't fit in is instantly a red flag. And it's not fitting in because there's a clique, it's fitting in because an OSA agent doesn't want to be open and kind and build genuine kind relationships. They want to gather information and start spreading rumors and riling you up. And it's blindingly obvious to tell, to see when it happens. And the best defense is building a great community with kindness and compassion, because you cannot manipulate kindness or compassion. You know, it's in a way that will harm you. You know, if you just open everybody, hey, you're an OSA agent, welcome to protest, thank you for giving us another number, right? We're now a bigger protest because of you. I appreciate that. Would you like a cupcake, you know, or Sam's nuts?
Yeah, right. Haggis Besser is saying there needs to be a mass buying of former Scientologist books to put them back on the #1 bestseller list. Those get published.
All of these books here are ex-Scientologist books.
Yeah. And there's been, I think Robert Dam's book is being translated. Jamie Mustard's own biography will also come in the summer. So there's going to be new books, and hopefully that will boost the sales of others as well. Yeah.
That's Robert Dam's old one in English. His new one's coming. His new one's out in, but not in English, isn't it?
Yeah, but I know there was a translator working on it, so hopefully it will come around the same time as Jamie's book. Will put more focus also on the children that have horrible experiences in Scientology, because as far as I know, to a certain extent, it's still going on. So it needs still focus. The Journey is saying Scientology began watching me when I spoke out about higher ed and stand executives for California. Are you familiar with the Journey 2020?
No, I don't. But hello, welcome aboard.
Okay.
Thank you.
So someone you should definitely connect as well. The Journey 2020 has been working for over a year now, building on the Google Map platform all Scientology locations in the world, starting from the 60s to this date.
Oh wow, we should team up. I a couple of years ago, I built a whole Google Map system with all of the orgs that currently exist in the UK and Europe. I think I did on Google Maps, like a pin location, all of them. So yeah, we should team up, and I can share that and help you out. For sure. Send me an email.
Yeah, definitely. And your email is
hello@apostatealex.com.
Yeah, maybe the mods can put it in the chat as well, so people can reach out to you. And she has been experiencing a lot of sabotage from the Scientology side because she is doing this extensive work.
Yeah.
And Katrine, good to see you. Lies and Violence, Church of Scientology. Yes. In your opinion, and probably in my opinion as well, but let's not state it as a fact. on a public platform.
Well, I am quite happy to state that as a fact, simply because you know, Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard have been found guilty of fraud in France and in Hungary. They have been found guilty of the largest infiltration of the US government in its history. That is testified, proven in court, fact. So yes, they lie. In terms of violence, Debbie Cook gave legal testimony under oath that she and others that she witnessed were physically beaten by David Miscavige. So she was not lying. It is a fact.
Thank you. Thank you. I can really hear you have given more interviews than I have, but I have heard these firsthand experiences also from people. So it's a definitely very strong opinion of mine and apparently a fact as well. Lara, if Em is in the house,
Hey, Laura.
love you. Love to you both. Love to you also, Lara. You're a really brave warrior in Los Angeles. Admire your work as well. And the way to combine art and music with Scientology, her history in Scientology, I think it's really powerful. Powerful message. Kate is saying the harder they try, the sillier they look. They have negative credibility.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that my lawyer said to me very, very early on, was like, it's really hard in the UK, at least, right? You kind of have a carte blanche to say whatever you want about Scientology, because they would have a really tough time proving defamation, right? Firstly, it's Scientology policy to threaten to sue, not to actually sue. So Scientology will never instigate legal action, or very, very rarely. But they will try and push you to do it. And once you instigate legal action, they will fight back with a dozen court cases. But they won't really sue you unless you force their hand. But with defamation, it's like, you know, if they threaten to sue you for something you said being defamation, well, the first thing they will have to prove to a court is that they had a reputation that has been damaged. And there is so much press out there that is damaging to their reputation. In any court of law, they'd have a real tough time proving their reputation has been damaged by anything that you've said. So, you know, I'm not saying go out there and defame Scientology, but I'm saying, you know, just put things into context.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Charisma Honum-Vries is here, saying probably the two best Church of Scientology protesters in the world. Wow.
United we stand.
Yes, thank you so much. I think there's a lot of people doing great work. Lupita is saying, honestly, Scientology does half of the work for the critics. They stay being their own worst enemy. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Patty is saying their view on reporters explains why at the Blue Building the security said that the protesters were paparazzi, and then the members quickly turned around and walked away. Yeah. So this is something recent that was discovered. They were telling, because there was an event happening over there. They were telling the public that the paparazzi was present.
Yeah, because that's a lie that they can tell their parishioners, because saying they're paparazzi is like, no, they're not SPs. They're not against Scientology. Actually, they are so interested in how fast Scientology is expanding. They're here to take pictures of our event. Like, this is great that they're here, but they are paparazzi reporters, so don't go and talk to them. And so that Scientologist goes away going, these people standing outside every day are genuinely interested in Scientology because we're doing great things. And it's like, no, these people are trying to help you escape and leave. You know, but again, it's just lies that Scientology tell to their parishioners.
Yeah. Emily is saying, Alex, you're so well-spoken and inspiring protester. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Kat is saying, for every story told, there are 3 that are still silent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Kate is also saying that it's important to have all these stories because together it shows the true severity and systematic nature of Scientology's abuses.
Yeah, that's such a good word. It's systematic. You know, it is a it is a fundamental part of the very fabric of Scientology. It is built on abuse. It's disgusting, quite.
Yeah. Peter's saying the act of freedom of speech in the UK and Europe have been highlighted by the new administration in the US. I'm not familiar.
Yeah,
What
all I'll
this
say on
is.
this is that, like, I find it hilarious, right, how hypocritical Scientology are, right? They will do anything they can to stifle free speech and censor people who speak out against Scientology and scrub the internet of anything critical about them. But they are the first people to use the free speech argument in their defense of all of the lies and rumors they throw out there on their Stand League website. So they want freedom of speech to apply to only them and not everybody else. But unfortunately, freedom of speech applies to everybody. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Kathy is saying so many people doing so much behind the scenes, and I respect all of them. Scientology has so many tentacles that it will take many different ways to take them down.
Yeah,
I agree.
absolutely. And I also just want to throw in there that, like, you know, someone, you know how you get all these comments that are, you know, negative or stirring the pot or whatever. Someone commented a little while ago, it's like, why doesn't Alex ever call out and thank the people that help him behind the scenes? And I just want to make it really, really clear that most of the time it's because they don't want to be known, right? People who are contributing behind the scenes want their identity to remain anonymous because maybe they're under the radar, or maybe they're invested in it, but they don't want to put their neck on the line. And they've asked me to not speak out, speak their name or whatever. So I always say thank you for the contributor or the source. And other times I haven't had that conversation with the person, but I've decided not to name them publicly because I know that Scientology watch every single video that I do. They are coming after me with the full force of their Office of Special Affairs and will do anything they can to try and disrupt the lives of anybody that's helping me. So I personally think it's the right thing to do to protect the people who are supporting me, to not name them publicly. But I'm not trying to claim credit for what they're doing, which is why I always say it's so important to collaborate. There's a team, it's a teamwork effort. You know, I'm not trying to diminish anybody's support in any way. Actually, a lot of the time it's you know, it's a protection security thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I'm happy to thank anyone who, you know, who wishes to also get the recognition, or even if they don't wish for it. For example, Elron Hapkalpalas has given me the insights of the Sea organization, what is happening in Denmark. I would have never been able to get this type of knowledge, even, like, you know, up to date knowledge from the past 10 years, if he hadn't in touch with me. So he has had a huge impact on the level of knowledge I have of the operations over here, as well as having inside contacts inside Scientology, which must drive them really mad right now because
Scientology hate it when I reference really up-to-date statistics. Like, you know, when somebody sent me the you know, Scientology London's stats one week and I talked about them, they went into overdrive. How do I know their stats from yesterday? Well,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely. And Rose, who has been helping me a lot, also doesn't have her own channel, but she's been a huge support, and I have been giving her many thanks before. But yeah, Scientology is leaking in UK and in Denmark, so I don't want to say too much, but I, you know, want to keep them on their toes regarding that. Marcy gifted 10 Scientology Up North memberships. Thank you so much. And remember to thank Marcy for the gifted membership if you received one. Kathy is also saying, like you said, keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
yeah.
Absolutely. I will just go and see if there's any additional comments or questions over here. Here, Amy M. What does Alex think of the song Joe made about the billboards he's mentioned in the song?
I haven't heard it, but I will now go and see if I can find it.
Okay, yeah. So it's Jojo Bananas
Yes, yeah.
channel.
I know the channel.
Yeah.
I just
Okay.
haven't
So
seen the music yet.
yeah, great. Lupita is saying that Robert Dam's the first book, Defector, is available on Kindle. So that's great. Dreamscape saying they tried to sue Debbie Cook. That didn't work out so well for them. I had a thought yesterday about Debbie Cook after I had conversation with Bianca. She was referring to abuse that happened under her supervision because she was directly reporting to her. And I thought, well, Debbie Cook settled her case with Scientology. That should not be uh, prohibiting Debbie Cook being sued by her victims in the future. How do you see that?
I mean, I don't know the intricacies of the US legal system, but
Mm,
I think that would be a very difficult case. I think it would be difficult to bring a case against someone like Debbie Cook or someone of that level, because the defense I would imagine Debbie Cook would make is that she is also a victim. And yes,
mm,
I mean, I don't know about the specifics of the abuse that Debbie Cook may or may not have been involved in, but
mm,
there is an element of like, you know, that it doesn't excuse the behavior and allowing the
mm,
abuse. However, it does provide great context. And is it really that individual who actually did the abuse, or did the abuse happen
mm,
by somebody else or by the church as a whole under that person's watch? And legally, where does that put the responsibility in terms of a lawsuit? And that's the
mm.
intricacies of the legal system that really makes it difficult for people to seek justice, because
Yeah.
you can say this person abused me, but it's like, well, okay, yeah, but actually, you know, legally speaking, it was somebody else or the organization or whatever,
Yeah.
depending on the laws in the
Yeah.
country. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that needs to change, right? The law in all countries, I believe, that Scientology operates in, needs to
Mm,
be clearer defined and tailored towards cults. Like, for example, in the UK, coercive control legislation, right? The Serious Crime Act 2015 made coercive control a criminal offense. However, it applies only to domestic close family partnerships and relationships. So the law in the UK recognizes coercive control, but it says you can only be coercively controlled by a family member or a partner. And that's
mm,
a problem because it recognizes the thing, but only in one context. It's like, well, you know, no, coercive control happens in lots of settings. You could be coercively
mm,
controlled by a religious leader or by a
mm,
gym group or a boss at work. And by changing that legislation, it will suddenly open the door and allow people to seek justice, um,
mm,
for something that has happened years and years ago or whatever. So yeah, I think that's, and also let's not forget, that's where Scientology love to play, is that murky waters, like Hans Christian Schwartz just said, all the gray areas, the areas where
mm,
the law hasn't been tried and tested or it's not very clear. Scientology love to operate in those areas because they know how to
mm.
exploit those loopholes. Very long-winded way of answering that question about Debbie
Yeah.
Cook. But look, I think anybody who's been abused by Scientology or a Scientologist should do what they can to seek justice and report it to law enforcement and see what they can do to get the help that they need. I don't know enough about Debbie Cook herself and her story,
Mm,
but I'm under the impression that her agreement, her settlement, was with
mm,
Scientology, and it involved signing an NDA and agreeing never to speak about it publicly. There is
mm,
nothing that somebody can sign in a contract that absolves them from all responsibility of past wrongdoings. So
mm. We'll have to see if something happens one day.
yeah. Sorry, that was a
Uh,
really, really long-winded answer. I'm so sorry, Miriam.
no, that's okay. That's okay. Interesting to hear you pick your brain on that because we're not legal professionals, but we have all our own point of views, and
Yeah.
all ideas, great and bad, start from somewhere. So I just wanted to throw it out there. Emily is saying, Alex, I remember that you once calculated an estimation of how many people were still in the cult. Do you have an estimation now or over the UK at least?
I don't think that was me. I haven't done that. But I've heard other people estimate that there are 30,000 Scientologists in the world. In the UK, the last census, I think the number was 1,800 or 2,800 Scientologists in the UK. That isn't necessarily an accurate figure because there are a lot of Scientologists that travel from Europe to study and live here that wouldn't have filled out the census. And the question on the census about your religion is optional, so not everybody has to answer it. So there's a bit of leeway. But the point is, it's not about the number of people. It's about the wealth, the power, and the control and the influence. If you look at the money per capita, right, the Mormon Church, for example, has way more money than Scientology does in its bank account. But if you divide it by number of members, right, Scientology per capita is the wealthiest religion on planet Earth, right? Because they're $3, $4, $5, $6 billion, whatever your estimate is. Divide that by how few people there are, and yeah, per person, they've got more money than any other religion on the planet, and that's what's important to note.
Yes, and I think that's a perfect time to end this conversation this time. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Thank you for everyone in the chat. Thank you for great comments and questions. And yeah, hello to everyone we didn't get to say hello this time. But I think we had a good conversation. If there's any questions, you can always leave them in the comments afterwards. And
thank you, Mirjam, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing, and thank you to everybody who stands there alongside you in protest. And I know that you've got a strong team of people behind you, helping behind the scenes, just like I do. And so, thank you to all of those people. We as a community need people like you to put their neck on the line and stand out. And together, collaboratively, we'll make a difference. So, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you also. You have been also very helpful for the past year, giving answers to questions and supporting, and also giving information that I was not aware of. So it's definitely all collaborative work. And thank you to my moderators, Joe, Iris, and Fluffer, for keeping the chat clean, because that's the way we like it over here. And if you haven't yet subscribed to Alex, please head to his channel and give him subscribe and a like on the latest video where you've been actually quite active recently. So there's a lot to see over there. And have a nice evening, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.